Hello, you degenerates. Good start, I know. If you're seeing this, then this means that Nick and I have failed to collaborate to find a schedule where we can record together. And now I'm having to dip back on a failsafe. So, I'm going to, as long as I don't have footage otherwise, I'm going to be 100% completing Dark Souls 2. By imposing myself with this absolutely loathsome task, I figure I'll be disincentivized from actually continuing this series and forced to continue recording with Nicholas, even if it means chasing him down and tying him to his chair again. Alright, we now have our sweet, sweet nightmare boy. Let's see him. Oh, my god. He's beautiful. Anyway, so, I completed Dark Souls 1, 100% all the achievements, as has been well publicized, and Dark Souls 1 is not only my favorite Souls game, I would argue it's the only Souls game that I really like that much. I don't hate any of the other Souls games. I don't hate Bloodborne. Although I haven't played Demon Souls, and I've only played Bloodborne sparingly, I haven't finished it. I'm not a fan of the faster and more aggressive style of play that you see in those games. One of the things that attracts me so much to Dark Souls 1 is I like the slower, more pensive, more shield-heavy style. And now I'm going to make the terrible mistake of going back to fight that troll again. Dark Souls 1 was a game that you ideally wanted to be playing very safely. You want to be taking things slow. And many of the areas in which the game created difficulty did so by forcing the player to play out of that slow comfort zone. Forcing players into poison swamps and stage obstacles. Although the stage obstacles were still relatively minor, there weren't a lot of instant death pits, at least in some areas of the game. Obviously you have the archers in Sen's Funhouse, but with this game, the difficulty is handled very differently. This game is still not in the frantic, fast style of a Dark Souls 3 or a Bloodborne. However, it comes into a weird middle ground, because it's not quite as slow as Dark Souls 1 either. As well, this game manufactures difficulty in a lot of cases by simply throwing 800 enemies at you. And you see it most later on. I mean, right now I just have a few trolls. Oh! This game also has hitboxes. Although one would be forgiven for not believing that. Oh. He's magnanimous. Is it made worse by the fact that I know people in real life who look like this? Probably. Dark Souls 2 is a bit of an odd game in terms of the Soul series, because people often attribute it to being made by the B team because Hidetaka Miyazaki did not work on Dark Souls 2. He worked on 1, I'm almost certain he worked on 3, and I know he also worked on Bloodborne. Miyazaki was the sort of creative force behind Demon Souls originally, which Demon Souls is sort of the unrefined clay that Dark Souls would come to be made out of. I don't recommend most people go back to play Demon Souls if they like Dark Souls and are curious. You're certainly welcome to, but keep in mind that the ideas on exhibition there, while they're crazier, And in some ways, there's something you will never see in any other game, and they're very praiseworthy for being unique. They're not all done with a level of polish which I can wholeheartedly recommend. In fact, many ideas are outright poorly executed. And obviously I'm not going to talk too much about Demon's Souls because I have the least experience with it of any Souls game. So, when I say that, if you're a big Demon's Souls fan, take what I just said about Demon's Souls and keep in mind the fact that I have basically played it not at all. And I'm speaking effectively out of my ass. However, I don't think that even Demon's Souls fans will necessarily disagree with me when they say that it's a very unrefined piece of metal. It provided the base of temperance that would then go on to be a relative smash hit, but it would then go on to be the widely acclaimed game that is Dark Souls 1. Because Dark Souls 1, love or hate it, it is the game that most people seem to concede as having the formula at its best. And obviously there are people who will claim that of every game in the series, but I think if you were to look at simply the consensus of what people think, I think most people would come towards Dark Souls 1, and I would ultimately go there myself. So again, if you want to take all of this as me spewing heresy straight from my dirty asshole because I simply just don't know, which to an extent I absolutely don't, and I acknowledge that, then you're welcome to. But I don't think I'm being entirely unreasonable when I say that Demon's Souls especially is unrefined at best. Dark Souls 3 is a game that I acknowledge is perfectly fine. I am not a fan of it. I don't think it is inherently bad. I don't think there is that much objectively wrong with it, but it is very much not something that I want to see out of Dark Souls. And Bloodborne is sort of the same, it's just that Bloodborne is a lot... I would say Bloodborne is better in recognizing that vision, even though it's still a vision that I don't particularly like. Because Dark Souls 3, like Bloodborne, plays very fast, and it rewards more aggression than it does turtle shielding. However, Dark Souls 3 does not have the benefit of something like the... I believe the term is the rally mechanic in Bloodborne, wherein after getting hit you have a short period of time where you can regain some of the health you've lost by doing damage to enemies. This is one of many things that Bloodborne does that allows it to lend itself to a more aggressive, forward-thinking style, where that as well as the fact that there are, I think, 2 shields in the entire game. So what else is there to do and things betwixt? Well, considering I'm on Scholar of the First Sin, not much. Scholar of the First Sin is an ordeal. There are people online who will tell you that Scholar of the First Sin is effectively a randomizer or a remix of Dark Souls 2, and that's pretty provably incorrect. There are changes done to it as that, but the game itself is marketing itself as the director's cut, almost, of Dark Souls 2. It is supposedly the definitive edition, and this is reinforced by the technical aspects of it, where when Dark Souls 2 was shown at E3, and when hype was being built for it, it, like many games, showed itself off in high resolution and with 60 FPS. And then Dark Souls 2, when it comes out, for consoles and for PC, the original version was locked at 30 FPS, and it had lots of resolution locking as well. And this led many people to complain about the downgrades that it saw, as they do with other games like it. So when Scholar of the First Sin was sold a few years later, or a few months later, I'm not certain of the timeline. When that came forward and people started to sell that, it was seen as greed, which people were right to see it as that. Scholar of the First Sin's release looked greedy, and it's hard to argue that it was greedy. If it had been a direct upgrade of the game, like many people see the Prepare to Die edition of Dark Souls 1 as, then I don't think people would see it as greedy, whereas Scholar of the First Sin was very much selling with features that should have been promised from the start, or were seen as having been promised from the start. So it was a lot harder to sympathize and see it as a direct upgrade as opposed to a scalping. This unfortunately has happened in more than one of FromSoft's games. FromSoft, like everyone else, is bound to business practices. And when Daddy has to make money, sometimes Daddy has to make money. One just wishes that Daddy wouldn't make money by belting us so often.